All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Core Devs meeting number 58. I just updated the agenda like a second ago with Martin's EIP, and I think that's it. So go ahead and refresh on the agenda if you haven't already. Um, let's start with the roadmap. I don't think there's any updates on that, but I did add a link to the Ethereum wiki so you all can keep up with some of the updates and proposals in the timelines. Um, so we can skip over that unless anyone has comment.
Sorry, Hudson. I thought the roadmap was probably discussion about how often we want to do releases, or do we, or maybe we shouldn't have a discussion it here, but just get some. If there was any discussion happening outside of it, if somebody can bring up the like some highlights of that discussion.
Ah,
That
got it. So, so what we had before was what Offrey came up with as far as a timeline goes that we all agreed to at the time, but I'm happy to change it with suggestions. Right now, what we have is May 17th, a hard deadline to accept proposals such as EIPs. And then we have a soft deadline of the 19th of August. No, wait, July. To have major client implementations. It's under the timeline section on the link on there. What were your thoughts on that, Alexi?
So I guess there is a active discussion going on at the moment in Ethereum magicians, for example, and it looks like people were talking about. So the discussion is about a smaller and I guess more frequent smart hard forks, whether it is achievable or not with with our sort of setup and resources. And I think one of the crucial bit about it is the testing. Is that at the moment the testing seems to be like a big bottleneck because the testing kind of in most cases is something which happens after the EIP has been accepted and included into the hard fork, and that means that if we keep doing things this way, we would not be able to do smaller hard forks, because for the smaller hard forks, there needs to be some kind of pipeline going where there's multiple kind of hard works in the process of being prepared, and that includes the testing. So, I would like to get some comments maybe from Martin, because he recently responded in that thread.
Yeah, so I can reiterate what I wrote in the thread, and that is basically the hard forks we have done historically are very intensive on the test section, because the EAPs that are going in, they can have related effects. So as we change something and finalize stuff, we might have to redo earlier test cases and regenerate a lot of test cases. And this is, so I'm thinking that it might be easier and more spread out work if the hard forks are smaller and more spread out. That means it's not that big of a catch-up effect on the testers.
And then,
yeah, I don't know if Dimitri agrees though. Check.
Is Dmitry here?
Yeah, I actually agree with the smaller hard fork.
I've got a question for you, Dmitry and Martin. Is that so? In terms of the time spent on preparing a test, where is the biggest time spent? Is it the human labor, or is the test regeneration, or what is the kind of the biggest component that we would need to kind of parallelize and push it onto each parallel line of our pipeline processing thing?
I think the biggest time is to actually write down a test case in a JSON format, and sometimes it is about hundreds of test cases. And it would be good if those who propose EAP also propose some test scenarios, so we could have a process of converting those scenarios into JSON test case with many people than just me.
And what would be the ideal situation for you? Would the ideal be that the EIPs being proposed come with the generated test? Is it feasible for people to actually generate this test themselves, do you think?
In order to do that, I will have to teach them how to write the actual JSON test and how to generate the test. It might be better.
Maybe that's what we should do. We just kind of, because if our ultimate goal is to kind of get more people involved, we just start doing some kind of workshops, maybe, or online workshops, and teaching people how to write the test.
So totally agree. So I think it's unfeasible to have one person. So it means we currently have a truck factor of 1. If Dmitry gets run over by a truck, we don't have any other knowledge within the system of how to do testing. So I think a really good takeaway is let's rally some people to have more humans working on testing.
Actually, that's a thing which is already starting to happen, and as far as I know, it's mainly on the Python wing under Piper Merriam. There's some people, Anush, and a few more guys trying to improve the tooling specifically around testing.
I do think that better tooling would make a difference here. We did a lot of testing work with EWASM, and it's tricky. There's been a parallel thread in the fellowship forum about just generally setting higher standards for EIP authors, and I do think that like putting some of the burden on authors or submitters to like include tests or even just the types of tests they want would be a good thing. I think better tooling could make that easier.
Yeah. One thing though, there's quite big differences between different EAPs. I mean, if it's simple shift operations, those test cases can be defined pretty well. Or if it's a gas repricing, there's not much. Those test cases are very quick to write. But if it's something more intricate like the S store repricing, where we have these other extra weird edge cases where if you enter back in the same thing and you do it 3 times in a row and the moon is in half mode, those are really complicated to write and they take a lot of time to write, but it's a big variance.
But I suggest for these particular cases to still basically do it iteratively, but with the iteration consisting of the proposer is writing the first set of tests, and then these tests get reviewed by, let's say, the testing team, and then the work comes back to the proposer to just keep improving them, rather than basically just offloading this whole work to the testing team. So the testing team would basically just kind of look at the test and say, well, I think there should be more of here, this kind of test. And so using their experience to just guide the process of creation of more tests.
Yes, each proposer should definitely be responsible for more testing.
I think that the way we do that is to change EIP1 to make it a requirement to have some test cases for core EIPs. EIP1 needs a complete overhaul as it is, so maybe setting a deadline for EIP1 changes over the next month or whatever, and then get a lot of people working on a single PR for it would maybe be the most beneficial, but I'm ready to hear other opinions.
Also could be handled in 2.3.3, which is the hard fork meta. Alex gave me some feedback on it, and it should be ready to go ideally later today.
Okay, great. That's something we can also discuss next meeting once it's done, and then accept it.
Hudson, what are are there 1 or 2 other important changes that really need to be made in EIP1, just so we know what's on your mind?
Yeah, there's also a kind of a discussion that needs to happen on how something gets to rejected, if we even have a rejected state, or if we just have a withdrawn state, what it means for something to be accepted when it comes to an ERC, and then eventually maybe setting up kind of the framework to make ERCs into a completely different repo, since they're becoming so different from other EIPs. A lot of the time there's redundancy with the EIP1 template, and when there's not redundancy, there's just things that don't need to happen at all. So it makes it a little bit more confusing for people to write ERCs. I've been told. So that's kind of my thoughts.
It strikes me this is important, but also like not super technical. So I wonder if this isn't something that one of the cat herders might sort of be comfortable taking ownership of over the next few weeks.
Yeah, starting the thread and kind of managing it, that would be great.
So Tim's already working on this. We've already talked about it. So yes, it's happening.
Great. Okay. Well, we'll communicate in the chat, like on Telegram or Gitter or something, and keep up with that. I have that as a note here, and I'm there's already a note taker today, but I'm taking personal notes for basically to-dos for next time, and then we will come up with, like, maybe in the notes there'll be like a, what's been accomplished, what needs to be accomplished, to-dos for next time kind of a thing, so we can keep up with that. That was a suggestion from Greg. Thank you, Greg.
I have one more question about roadmap before we move on. I don't know if anyone else has any open questions on this topic.
You can go ahead.
The question is just, so this has come up a few times now in conversation, this May 17 deadline, I'm just reading here, it says hard deadline to accept proposals for Istanbul. Is there any requirement on how mature those EIPs are at that point in time? Like, could someone hypothetically like just file a placeholder EIP? It'd be good to have some consensus on this.
Good question. I don't have the answer to that.
I can give my perspective. I can give my perspective on this, because I sort of, when we did the workshop in Stanford earlier this year, I'd been asking everybody, like, what could you specify by May the 17th? And I was kind of anxious about myself being able to specify something, which I think might be not very likely that I would be able to specify everything. But then I kind of decided to relax about it, because I think if we rather introduce the sort of the more frequent hard forks pipeline thing, so that people will be more inclined to actually do proper work on EIPs before proposing them, and not trying to rush it in and just to make sure that they get some placeholder in, because I don't think it's a good idea to just put the placeholder. So I think the IIPs need to be worked out pretty well before, and then the problem with this deadline, that now with the plan of having our hard forks every 9 months and these deadlines, is that now obviously if I miss the deadline, I have to wait another year or something for something to happen. So, but if I know it's only going to be 3 months, then I say, okay, I'm going to take another 3 months to make sure my AIP is properly defined, everything is done, tests generated, and then I will go in and definitely will make a big impact.
I think another piece of this is, it depends on what you mean by placeholder. Merging an EAP to get it into draft mode that just fits the template is not very hard. And people are welcome to leave text saying, I'm still working on this. So the bar of getting your EAP merged should be a hard format.
Well, here I'm not sure about. I don't want to go into the specifics of EIP process, because I'm not very well. I know I haven't thought it very well, but for me, it's not really like EIP. It's something which you definitely propose to be included into the hard fork, whether it's EIP or like fully specified, or I don't know what is it. So one of the reasons I published my state-run proposals not as an IP but pre-IP, which I just want to emphasize that I haven't got to the stage with the IP yet, but I still want to conversation going. And IP or not, I mean, it doesn't really matter how I call it, but I don't know. So
it does, unless we're now proposing that we don't use the EAP process at all, and we don't need to have an assigned EAP number, and we don't need to track process. Then people are going to drop fully formed things in without using the EAP process.
No, it's fine to have EAP written and proposed and merged, and that's fine. But the EAPs that are kind of slated for the inclusion into the hard fork should have a certain and very high requirements in terms of readiness. So we can create hundreds of EAPs and then get them merged, but it doesn't mean that we're going to plan them for the hard forks.
Absolutely. I'll add a link to EAP 233, which basically has a proposed section so that people know that they're signaling that they're going to try and get this EAP in, but it has to move through other sections. And that may include tests and everything else to actually get in. But I think that the sooner that you get in a merged EAP that isn't just filled with to-dos, that's a useful step to signal that you're serious about engaging with the process.
So I would propose that we change the process insofar as not have it hard fork centric, but have it EAP centric. So that, say, the first step is that an EAP get accepted, and the second step is that it's implemented in Gethin parity, and the third step is that there are tests that fully cover it, and everyone's happy with those tests, and the clients pass it. And the step after that is, okay, it passes all these 3 or 4 or 5 steps. So when can we include it? Okay, a month from now. Boom. And the clients.
Great idea. Totally in favor of more pipelining.
I think I have kind of drafted a process, and I'm trying to propose that. I'm from cat herder, so I'm doing it from that perspective. What we can do is like we can suggest a EAP author to send, open an issue at EAP saying that EAP should be considered for next hard fork. For this hard fork, if we are going for Istanbul, we can do that. And I've created a tracker at GitHub of ECH where we are listing all the EAPs. It states that these EAPs are at proposed status, and then it goes for the then we bring it to the code of discussion. If it is accepted, we will change the status, and eventually we will take it to client implementation, testnets, and finally include it in that. And I'm also referring to the tracker that Boris have created about the client implementation. We can go ahead and do that. So yeah, please.
Yeah, sorry. So what my alternative is that would be to not focus on like Byzantium is the next one and which one are mature enough, but to instead focus on one by one. Like, oh, this week it looks like this EAP is now finished. It's implemented everywhere. It is has tests for everything. It is well written, everything. So we'll just schedule that EAP for 1 month from that time.
Yeah, I think that I like Pooja's plan if it goes with the current status quo of having like a named hard fork many months in advance. If we do these smaller hard forks, we would have to adjust it. So we'll just look at all the different. I think we should just go to Ethmagicians and look at all of the different proposals we have here and come to consensus on doing this. I'm hearing a lot of consensus around doing smaller hard forks though, and I think that's a great idea personally, so we should get to talking on that, and we can probably get that set up pretty soon, especially with some of the EIPs that we know are maybe going to go in to the next hard fork that have tests done and things like that. Any other comments?
Yes, one quick one before we move on from this. We haven't really concluded like what we meant by the May 17th deadline and what's the state of the EAPs we want there. Are we expecting EAPs to be in a state where clients can implement them by then, to already have implementations? Yeah.
We might throw that whole deadline out the window if we change to smaller hard forks. I think is the answer. If someone has a different answer, feel free.
Yeah, I think this is what I kind of implied, that, if we do switch to a different model, then and this is what I meant when I said that I kind of relaxed about my May 17th deadline, because I want to work towards the quality of proposal rather than to the deadline.
Yeah, and doing smaller hard forks does that, I believe.
Yeah, I very strongly agree with Martin and Alexei here that smaller hard forks in combination with a more EIP-centric process, I think it's pretty clear would produce higher quality EIPs. I'm going to move that we table this conversation and take it to the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians forum and like work out some more concrete proposals there and not take up more all core devs bandwidth on this right now.
Sounds good. What's next? We have some EIPs we can start talking about. Is Vitalik here? Because the next one is actually one of his. Let me check. I don't think so. If he comes later, we'll just have him go back to this. But the one that I included here was EIP 1599, a fee market change for the ETH 1.0 chain. There's a link to that if people want to check it out. The next one is one that I think Dano did, which is early, which is the Ethereum network upgrade windows. And I think that's kind of related to what we just talked about, but just a little bit more defined. Is that right, Dano?
Yeah, my goal in defining this is to provide a little more certainty to when we can expect the networks to launch, the network upgrades to launch. And I built some of the stuff around it with the idea that we could use it for either large, infrequent, or shorter, more frequent hard forks. The gist of it is that we would set aside 4 weeks out of the year that we would target launching our network upgrades in. And for the sake of discussion, I picked the third week of January, April, July, and October to start the discussion. And they're each 4 weeks apart. They dodge August and December and 4th of July for the US, big vacation times that people want to take. So on that subject, one of the big advantages is it provides engineers a calendar that they can take a vacation, not have to worry about a hard fork being plopped in the middle of it, when they plan their stuff in advance. And also for network operators and node operators, when they know they need to do upgrades, they also don't need to at the same time worry about a network upgrade unless it's in the window. So some of the details of it, I split the network upgrades into 3 broad categories just for the sake of convenience. First one's roadmap, which is the ones we've always done. I created a new category, priority, which is something more important than a roadmap upgrade, but less important than the third category, which is a critical network upgrade. That's when something's broken and has to be fixed, and we need to do whatever we have to do. So the 3 hard forks we've done before, Homestead, Byzantium, and Constantinople will be roadmap upgrades. And like the DAO fork, Spurious Monkey and Tangerine Whistle would be the critical upgrade examples. And there are some standards around priorities, do those, like the third week of a month, and critical, do what needs to be done. And again, the motivation for this is to provide a certain amount of scheduling certainty. It's kind of like, Patch Tuesday for network upgrades.
Cool. Any comments on that beyond what we talked about earlier?
Yeah, I'm completely supporting this. It would be very good in combination with what we just discussed before, because it sort of looks at the problem from the other side, from the side of people who actually have to run the nodes, and they need the certainty about when these upgrades can actually happen.
Great. Anyone else? Okay. I'll go.
I have actually quite different opinion about that. I mean, doesn't mean I don't like the idea, but I think we try to put a lot of constraints and decisions how the process should work on the same time, and we haven't proven yet we can keep the deadlines that are scheduled for Istanbul, for example. So I would wait with applying this one until we actually have a smooth one for the first time.
So one of the things about Constantinople is part of it just shipped out because we didn't have a deadline to work towards. They've done
exactly. So the first time we have deadlines, and that's why I wouldn't add additional, let's say, requirements to that.
So they've done process and work studies, and the absence of deadlines tends to result in a longer work cycle with the same or lower quality. So, putting some sort of certainty, and it's not, if we miss a window, it's only 3 months. And that gives us, there's less haggling about, well, do we do it in January? Do we do it in February? What if we could sneak it in between Christmas and New Year? It removes some of the arguments in the process. So there is an Ethereum thread on this, since that's the theme, because we're taking a lot of time on these. I would encourage everyone with an opinion on it to come in and express it. especially if you want to change the dates. It's still not in draft. I need to do some upgrades on it. I think one of the authors put some comments in there. I'm going to upgrade it, but yeah. So there's an Ethereum Magicians thread that's mentioned on it. So
if I'm understanding Pablo correctly, he's not saying that it's a bad idea. I also strongly support this idea. I think Pablo's kind of suggesting let's stick with the plan we have, the deadlines we have for the next hard fork, and then like make this something that happens after that, assuming that hard fork happens smoothly. And I think that might be an okay idea.
Yeah, I think that right now Istanbul is targeting the 3rd week of October.
So what you're saying, it's compatible. The Istanbul is compatible with your proposal, right?
Yes, that's why I picked those 3 months.
Okay.
Cool. The next
you see text a moment ago about EIP 1599.
Oh, what was that?
That it's EIP 1559, sorry, is not in, sorry, 1599, I'm not sure which one it is not in draft yet. So someone needs to do something about that if we want this to be proposed for Istanbul.
Oh, the merge bot might have caught it. Okay. Yeah, someone go in there and fix that. I don't know who wrote it.
No. It's not currently a correctly formatted EAP. It's a random thread that Vitalik started.
Ah, I see. Okay. Sounds good.
I'll nudge Vitalik to get it as an EIP.
Thanks, Danny. Next up, we have an EIP proposal from Martin. It has really pretty graphs on it. Oh, the link doesn't work. Let me try to find the right link and post it in here. But like the graphs, like and stuff like that, put PowerPoint graphs to shame. So everyone should check it out. And it says page not found, Martin. Did it go private?
No. It's I can post it in the All Credap channel.
Yeah, go ahead. But it's about specifically opcode repricing for tri-size dependent opcodes.
Exactly. So briefly, I just did a lot of measurements doing full sync with the GAT instance, which was customized so I can do some better aggregation of where the time is going. And
yeah, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, definitely the link doesn't work. But it was working a couple hours ago, so I'm not sure what happened. But
so wait, Trenton, can you see it? So wait, it's working for you, Trent?
Yeah, I posted it in the chat.
No, that's a 404. Maybe there's some consistency issue on GitHub right now.
Yeah. I can't really fix it now. But the thing is, this focuses on trying to make the operations which have deteriorated over time, put them back in balance again. And those specific ones that I've aimed for are S-load and balance. And there are two versions to this EAP. In both of them, the S-load would increase by a factor of 4 from 200 to 800. And in version A, the balance would be repriced to 700 from 400, so be in parity with Xcode size and Xcode hash. In the other version, I also introduced an opcode called self-balance, which would be priced very, very cheaply at like 5, because that is data. The balance of the executing contract is something which the EVM is guaranteed to have already in the cache. There are other things that could be done to make all opcodes more equivalently heavy. But that's not a really concern for this EAP, because the main goal is to make sure that the things which are deteriorating and might deteriorate in a bad manner, that we fix that problem for now and maybe have to fix it again later. But that all depends on how the state size, what happens with the state size in the future with all the 1.x initiatives. If you have any suggestions, please tell me. We don't have to discuss everything now, but I'll be glad to get some feedback on this before it kind of finalizes.
Okay, thank you, Martin. And yeah, the link is working now. If y'all want to click on that in the agenda, it should pop up. Maybe you need to refresh the agenda. I'm not positive how it's going to work there. So for working group updates, there is a pretty thorough post by Alexi near the bottom of the agenda, and I'll let Alexi go ahead if he wants to go over that. Otherwise, we can just read the update on there. What would you rather do, Alexi?
I mean, I could, go over some moments that said that might provoke some questions. So I would like to get any initial questions there.
Yeah, great.
So basically, you probably saw, some of you saw that yesterday I published the stateless client prototype, which is also outlining, so essentially collecting data, how big these block proofs will be, and what are the next steps. And in short, the next steps could be either to try to bring those to bring the bandwidth requirement further down by using some more statefulness, or to use Starks. So that, but the thing is, I really wanted to get some questions about is there's something that come up with very sort of some time ago. It's called probabilistic estimation of contract sizes. Essentially, one of the issues that in the state rent and now is in the syncing protocols is that how to figure out the size of the contract, meaning how many items does the contract storage have. And so for the state rent proposals, the idea was to introduce it into the state, like over 2 stages using some 2 hard forks. But I thought about it some time ago, and I realized that you might be able to actually estimate not precisely, but approximately the size of the contract by using the assumption that the hash function Kchak256 has some kind of random oracle property. And I will probably publish it in a couple of days, because I have some code to do this estimation already. But essentially, for the state fees proposal, that would mean if we could bring forward, so this is in number 4 on the in my post and agenda. So there's this change J in the latest state fee proposal, which is the fixed prepayment for contract storage. And this is basically this is the requirement from my point of view to increase the block size limit, because it will stop kind of acceleration of state growth. So I'm hoping that this probabilistic estimation of contract size could help bring this change forward to the first hard fork, so we can actually do the sort of harmless block gas limit increase earlier. And so basically that is the main thing. Everything else has already been out there. And yes, and at number 6 as well, it's I'm also planning to do some more research on linear storage, because it could be integrated better with EWASM engine. But I'm still waiting for some further updates from EWASM team before I kind of launch into this. That's it. So everything else, as Hudson said, you can read out and then just come back maybe next time if you have questions, or come back to me personally.
Okay, thank you, Alexi. Does anyone have any comments? Okay, awesome. So there's still the Istanbul and ETH1X roadmap planning meeting, which is going to be quite different if we do like upgrades that are more frequent, but we'll still go over the EIPs that we're wanting in whatever the next hard fork is. That's April 17th and 18th. Boris, is there any updates on that are worth mentioning?
We are confirmed for full node. Thank you, Gnosis team, for hosting. More and more people are, I believe, using that event and the deadlines we have in place to propose EAPs. I just saw one from Virgil. A ton of them are related to precompiles, and we can also use that live format to, I think, discuss what a more continuous EAP process looks like. But there's lots and lots of meaty stuff out of there, which is why I wanted to put a deadline that was even earlier than the hard deadline for ETH proposals. So going well. 25 people or so have confirmed that they're coming now.
Or just to be clear, there is going to be like a remote participation option for folks who can't be there in person, right?
There is. Trent is helping me out with the live stream, so we'll capture all of the formal stuff, so we'll have things to refer to. I know that Virgil's going to be in Korea, and Vitalik wants to dial in, so Trent and I are going to work on timing to make sure that we don't have to make people get up in the middle of the night if they want to present.
Great.
And I wanted to say that I really would encourage any kind of client developers from Geth and Parity to come around, because this really makes these meetups much richer in terms of like the content. So yeah, so if you if you can come, I mean, if you're somewhere close by, so please do.
Sounds good. Anybody else have comments? Okay.
Just one more quick thing. If we do end up adopting this kind of like quarterly release cycle, or doing more often, doing hard forks more often, and having a more concrete fixed schedule for it, I think it would be much easier to begin planning events like this way ahead of time, to give people time to plan to be there, which I think would be really awesome. So just another nice kind of knock-on benefit of doing that.
Mm-hmm. As long as we don't overdo it with the travel. What was that, Guillaume?
Yeah, just a quick question about the precompiled ZIPs that were proposed for the deadline. Is there any place where they're gathered, like where I can go over them?
Yes, so the Ethereum wiki that's in the schedule right at the top, roadmap, I and others are keeping that up to date. And with 233, that'll ideally be in GitHub. Really, the deadline is bringing people out of the woodwork. So I'm basically constantly curating this, and it should be relatively up to date. But ideally, it will move to GitHub so you can actually track a feed.
Yeah, it would be nice. Okay, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? All right. Next, we're not going to actually discuss ProgPow today as like itself, but we will go over an audit update and a carbon vote update. First of all, we're shutting down the carbon vote in 4 weeks. Lane, what is it again? 2 weeks.
2 weeks minus 1 day, so 13 days. I'm going to actually hard code that to a particular block number, so I'll just go ahead and do that, and then just like post the numbers so people know specifically when it will be cut off.
So if people want their coins voted, definitely go in there, take them out of your vault if you want to. Your all your safety precautions for your cold storage if you feel really strongly about this.
Yeah, just to remind people, I think the way it works is the tokens, the Ether needs to be in that address up to and including that final block number, but after that they can be moved and the vote count will not change.
Yes, good point. And as far as the ProgPow audit update goes, for some reason people don't want to give me money for stuff, or the cat herders money, I should say, because we've been going around talking to people, and it's not really working very well because people are kind of skeptical of the cost. I will say Atlantic Crypto gave 10,000 DAI, which was really nice of them. We do have a Gitcoin set up that I'll link to, and we're just continuing to fundraise. That's the only update. I'm confident that I'll have a lot more info the next time that I am on the core dev call. And then I'm going to post the Gitcoin in the YouTube chat and in, oh, someone put 5,000 more. And in the Zoom if anyone's interested in sharing that link around. So there's the link. And I think, am I missing anything, cat herders? Anybody? Okay, sounds good. Then that's all there is for that. Next, we'll go through testing updates. Dimitri.
Just a second on that. I've been totally confused.
Sure.
First, is the audit something we would like to have, or is it a showstopper if we can't get it funded?
So I consider those two separate questions. So it's something we would like to have. Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, or is it a showstopper? Okay. I don't believe it would be a showstopper personally, but that's something for us to decide after we figure out if we can fund it or not.
That just leaves everybody hanging, and all of this argument just going on and on and on. Did we make a decision on this already, or what?
I mean, technically we have. The community, there are some loud voices in the community who don't want it anymore,
I
but
don't care about loud voices in the community. When we decided to do an audit, did we decide that we needed an audit, or that if we could get an audit, we would use its results as part of our decision?
if we could get an audit, we would use the results as part of our decision. The reality of the situation is that it may not get funded, and if that's the case, then
Right.
it's not happening.
Okay. So if we cannot fund it, it does not affect our decision.
That is my understanding right now. That could change if people speak up within the core devs or loud enough within the community that the core devs start to listen, because as it is right now, the core devs are the ones who are coding this into their clients. That is my understanding. However, am not, this isn't my decision. I'm just saying this is my understanding of what's going on.
Okay. I'm more confused, but.
I mean, like, I don't make the decisions, Greg.
Well, I know. I'm trying to understand what decision we already made.
I mean, did you see my Reddit post?
No, I never go on Reddit.
Oh, I'll send it to you. That should clear some things up.
And similarly with the carbon vote, it's being done. It's going to be finished. What are we supposed to make of it?
Whatever you want.
I'm sorry to be rude here and butt in, but like, I think we've sort of reached consensus, and I think you may agree with this, that like these are not technical questions, and the all core devs is probably not the right channel for this stuff. So are you okay with our taking this back to Gitter or FEM or one of the other, or the cat herders or something?
Not yet, because all the discussions I look at, it appears that somehow the outcome of this vote is supposed to affect the core dev's decision whether to put it in, when I thought we'd already agreed as to the parameters of that decision. And if we haven't, this decision just is never ending.
I guess the answer that I have, in my opinion, is that if the carbon vote says something wildly different than it does now, or if for some reason there's enough people within this call or outside of this call who raise enough fuss, decisions can change. It's not like we make the decision and we're going to be stubborn and never change it. I would say that right now we're still, we would still go ahead with our previous decision.
Okay, this is a mess, but this isn't the time to discuss it, so we'll move on.
We often change decisions when we get more information. So I think it's not unreasonable that if we get more information over time, that a decision would change. Obviously, if it's a very technical reason, like if there's some massive bug and we can't move forward, as we've seen with previous EIPs, we don't move forward with them. But there's also like a lot of soft signaling with community sentiment that could change the decision. So it's not unreasonable that we like keep our ears to the ground as we continue forward with the decision that's been made.
Yeah, what was that, Amin?
Hey, yeah, Amin here. I was just trying to get clarity on what you said, because I didn't quite understand it when you said if you, at the risk of stating the obvious, it's like you won't implement ProgPow without an audit, right?
I don't know that for sure. We're just my next step is getting the audit funded, so I don't really have an answer.
What I mean is, like, is there a scenario where the audit doesn't get funded and we still implement ProgPow?
There is a scenario where that could happen, yes.
Okay. I have opinions about that, but I'm gonna hold off and we'll talk on other channels.
Yeah, take it to the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians. That's probably the best place. Can someone post a link to the best thread on that? I know there's a really good one that someone probably has pulled up. And if we can post that, then we can continue discussion there. And thanks everyone for being so understanding of the fact that we don't want to get into a 50-minute discussion on ProgPow again in this chat when we don't even have the audit funded yet. And it's not something where we even have a date that ProgPow would go in or anything like that, so I didn't want to waste that much time on the call today on it. Okay, so let's go ahead with testing updates. That'd be Dimitri and maybe Martin.
So hi everybody. I'm glad to announce to you that I finished stabilizing retested application on a blockchain test. So now it could run all of the blockchain tests, including the general state test in a blockchain form, on any client that support RPC interface, which is described on retested wiki page. And I also have instructions for you to use Docker build, so you could compile, retest it, and run it on your client if you support this interface and see how it works for your client. Also, I was thinking about this Genesis general state, Genesis format. EIP numbers that we have it fixed, right? So we could fix the fork names as well. And I opened the EIP proposal about that discussion about how could we name the forks. So I think it should be like EIPs. Fork names, once accepted, should not be changed because currently I got proposals from some people to rename the Constantinople Peaks fork, or during the test development fork name is being changed, and it requires me to change all the tests and source of CPP client and stuff like that. So once we come up how to name the forks, we could talk about Genesis format for every client. And the bare minimum of Genesis is described in retested wiki page. And this bare minimum is required to run blockchain state tests. So we're ready to switch to RPC test execution without the CPP client. Not test generation yet, but at least test execution is already possible. And then we could think about debugging through the RPC, and Hive will no more be the black box testing. Using the RPC, we could use methods to debug the particular transaction, particular tests. And I have a test tool to work with that. So please take a look at retested.
Anybody else have comments, questions, or updates? Okay. Usually by now we do client updates and then EWASM and research updates, but I wanted to kind of get a quick feel of the room on if people think these are valuable. These used to be the main focus of the core dev meetings because there was a lot of movement on implementing EIPs, and some of the clients were earlier on and needed to talk about their progress. What I don't know if we have a full purpose for them now, and I've heard some feedback that it will give a chance for people to kind of shill their client. Not that that's the end of the world, but I just wanted to hear people's thoughts on that, if we should continue to have this in the call.
Personally, I don't need to report my progress, but it can be on demand. So I mean, people can still put an agenda item if they want to give update of something that happened, because it at least happens to me that there are some meetings when I don't have anything to report.
I would say the same here. Sorry.
No.
I would say the same that most of the time I don't know what to detail in a client update, and it's usually just like, oh yeah, we released this version, and I don't think that's useful for anyone really, unless it's like, this is a version that you have to upgrade to, and I want to highlight that. But we're doing like a million things on the client otherwise, and there's not enough space or time to really dig into those details either. So that doesn't make it in. So I think it might be good, and having it on demand might be good, but like me personally, I don't know what to report most of the time.
I agree.
Cool. I'll start having a comment in there that just says, please add a comment to the agenda if you have any updates. For now, we'll keep the testing updates because I feel like that's pretty important personally. But if someone wants to get rid of that, talk to me privately. I only think it's important because testing is something that happens in every client, and we need to keep up with what's happening there.
So
go ahead.
So one nice side effect of having the client updates is we also get to know which clients are attending the calls. It gives a soft form of an attendance report, so which ones are involved in the process.
That's true.
That could be taken care of just in the notes to say which client each caller represents. Is one way around that.
And actually, we already do that. So, yeah, that's something we already do in the transcript / notes. So that's something we can continue to do. What was I going to say? And then same thing with EWASM. We'll just, if they have an update, go in there. Who feels like we need research updates in here? Danny, what's your opinion?
I mean, leaving space for them is probably reasonable. I don't know. It just kind of depends on the week on whether we have something interesting to share.
Yeah. I think that for a lot of the people in this room don't attend your calls for the ETH 2.0 implementers calls. So, in my opinion, it's valuable in so much as people get an idea what's happening on that side, because this is more the 1.0 and 1.x side.
Hudson, something we've seen that's worked really well in the EWASM team is that people post their updates to the agenda in text format, and then we only like on the actual call, we only discuss questions that people have. Ideally, everyone would have a chance would get their updates in, like, let's say 24, 48 hours before the call, and then everyone would have a chance to review them before the call. That definitely saves time.
Okay. I'll put that as everything, including research, in that case. And then Danny or Vitalik, if they have anything, can put it in as an agenda item. That sounds good to me. Oh, Danny, did you have a comment?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Oh, I have a comment, Hudson. So I just realized that I forgot to say something about the working groups, and it's also related to the research updates, I think.
Oh, go ahead.
By research, we normally mean something from Ethereum 2.0, I think, usually. And so I want to create, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm welcoming ideas, a new working group within Ethereum 1.x with the goal to create a prototype and then later a proper implementation of the finality gadget for the using the beacon chain as a finality gadget. And I know that there are some proposals from Vitalik. You could see the link in the update that I posted in agenda, but I would like to explore kind of various ways of doing it, like, because Vitalik was suggesting to do it via, let's say, BLS precompile, but maybe it's not practical. Maybe it could be done in a native code and things like this. But I want to get this work started somehow. I mean, I don't necessarily mean that I will be leading it, but I want to kind of launch it. So I wanted to put it in.
Yeah, I don't want to lead, but I'm happy to be a part of that, kind of advise and be a part of the discussion.
Cool. I'm not suggesting that you are going to lead, but we will find somebody.
I know. I'm just saying
we'll find somebody to lead it, and then we'll just kind of gather around these people.
Mm-hmm.
So is that an action item, calling for a lead for this initiative?
Yes. If somebody really wants to lead such an initiative, yes, we would kind of welcome and talk to them and see if, I don't know if we're making interviews for this role, but we'll see. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah, and this item, at least from my understanding, seems to be a high value for the community, and that people want it. So it's something we should probably, I mean, it's stuff that we're driving forward kind of in parallel and making sure that the processes on the E2 side are such that they have a feasible path to be embedded in the E1 stuff. But having somebody kind of drive it a little bit more will be worthwhile.
Okay, any other comments? All right. Do you have a research update today, Danny, that you want to discuss, or are you good?
I think we talked about it last time, potentially. There's been a lot of simplifications on the phase one proof of custody games for data availability. And that the phase one specifications are being done very actively, whereas the phase two conversations will continue to kind of emerge and happen. The design space there, I think I've said before, is pretty large, so we need to narrow things down. A lot of these clients that are working on the ETH2 beacon chain are getting near testnet data. So I expect to see some interesting stuff in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. Was that Justin who did the custody game stuff?
Yes. I think it's the name Jab. Justin Awesome Bit something. I don't know. But Jab is the name of this new custody business protocol.
Sweet. Okay. I think we finished a half hour early. Does anyone else have things they want to discuss? Any items that were missed?
Was there a WASM / research? Anything from WASM?
Here. We had a beta release this week, or actually last week, that introduced a new algorithm for gas estimation that is, I'm going to say, we call it gas exactimation. It's accurate down to one gas, even for EIP 114 opcodes. And it doesn't use binary search, so it only requires one pass through the transaction opcodes to get the estimation. Well, we're planning on writing a detailed blog post on the algorithm and how it works, but I think it's something that a lot of other clients could make use of for performance reasons.
Cool.
Okay, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I posted the release notes link in the agenda for this week. So if you're interested.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have one item I would like to mention. So in Aleph, we preparing to implement this new discovery protocol for the FP2P that Kev, what I understand, already have. So I just wanted to mention that. That's I think it's already ongoing effort, and if you have some comment or you would like to change our mind about that, let us know.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Thanks everyone for coming. I won't be on the call in 2 weeks because I'm going to a giant Star Wars convention that should be pretty awesome. And so someone else will have to take over. I'll find someone in the cat herders or maybe a few people to group up and do it. Or if anyone wants to volunteer from this group we have right now, feel free.
Can I volunteer to come to the Star Wars convention?
Absolutely not, because they're sold out and have been for months. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks. Bye.